$400
Point of order. Like, what is this
stolen
absolute
from
shit?
taxpayers.
This is absolute.
All right. Whoa,
Come on.
Okay,
Come on.
all right.
Come on. My integrity.
Let's
you can fry it off.
Okay, all right.
We had a witness here, the former Liberal minister in charge of the Liberal Green Slush Fund, Navdeep Bains, who basically gave one answer to every question, no matter what the question was last night, and as a result was stonewalling, prevaricating, that fun word, and not answering questions anywhere near in the vicinity of what was asked. It didn't matter what the question was, the answer was the same, and the answer was it was a fair and open process of appointments.
As I have stated in my previous
I don't want a
testimony
dissertation on the appointment process. It's a simple yes or no. You phoned her twice, yes or no?
As I stated in my previous testimony at industry committee, I reached out to a number of people during my tenure.
And he did the same, didn't matter whether it was coming from Conservative Bloc or the NDP. His answer was the same, regardless of the question. He didn't answer about the hiring practices of the former SDTC at CIBC where he worked. He didn't answer the questions about the phone calls that the chair of the Green Slush Fund, Annette Verscharon, who he appointed, made to her. He didn't answer the questions about anything to do with that appointment process or the appointment process that he appointed Andre Elise-Mateau from Cycle Capital, whose companies received 25% of the billion-dollar Green Slush Fund money, received over $100 million while she was on the board. He didn't remember any of that. In fact, he couldn't even remember appointing anyone. He just said, I made 100 appointments.
Point of order, point of clarification.
Now,
Just one
there's
second.
no such thing as a
Mr.
point of
Perkins.
clarification.
Yeah, sorry, I heard point of order first, so I'll go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, just perhaps a point of clarification. I'm a bit confused. On the one hand, Mr. Perkins has said he didn't answer questions.
Order.
On the other hand,
Come on.
I'm confused. He says he didn't answer the questions, and then he says he didn't recall and answer the questions.
Okay.
Which is it? He said he didn't recall, or he
Mr.
didn't answer.
Smith,
Which is it?
Mr. Smith,
Which is it? Which is it?
Mr. You're next on the list. You'll be able to.
Well, maybe he could get his story straight.
Get
back to reviewing your
Mr.
dictionary.
Erskine
We're wasting our time.
Well,
get his story straight. Hey, Rick, get your story straight.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
All right, just one second, Mr. Perkins. Mr. Perkins, I have Mr. Perkins. You'll have the floor in a second. Mr. Perkins.
Every single issue he's ever spoken on.
Mr. Perkins. First of all, I'm going to ask everyone to respect the interpreters. And speaking over one another is not only makes it very difficult for them to do their job, it actually potentially can be damaging. So I'm going to urge you all to respect the team that's supporting us in our important work. Mr. Durnay, you have a point of order, I believe.
And everybody was
Thank you.
talking over,
Yeah,
so
it's yes. All right. Mr. Perkins.
Liberals, particularly Mr. Erskine Smith, who's a newbie on this committee, haven't done their homework, haven't read the documents, haven't looked at the spreadsheet from the Green Slush Fund of all the grants they made over the 20 years. I'm not surprised that he hasn't made the effort to do that. He's too busy interviewing the current finance minister, conflict carbon tax Carney, to do his homework on this committee. He's too busy promoting his podcast with the soon-to-be former Prime Minister and trying to rescue his career than doing his parliamentary work on this committee, which is to actually read documents other than the PMO speaking points that he's given that deal with the issue of the corruption of the $400 million of stolen money by Liberal appointees. I thought Mr. Erskine Smith had more integrity than that, than to worry, not be worried about $400
Point of order.
million
Like, what is this
stolen
absolute
from
bullshit?
taxpayers.
This is absolute bullshit.
Whoa.
Come on.
Okay,
Come on.
all right.
Come on. My integrity.
Let's.
You can fuck right off.
Okay. All right. Mr. Perkins, I'm going to ask you to get back on topic.
Again.
I'm going to ask Mr. Erskine Smith. I understand your irritation. First of all, your language. I'm going to ask you to retract your language.
I'll retract when he retracts. He impugned my integrity. Deeply unparliamentary.
All right, Mr.
And we can both retract, Chair.
Mr. Erskine-Smith, well, I'm talking about your curse words, not what you actually said. Now, we all have ample time to speak today. We all can see that when we interrupt a member, everyone gets wound up. Let's just let everyone have their share of their time, and you're welcome to respond to it in your time. And I believe if we show each other the courtesy, while we might not always like what's being said by other members, I think the thing we ought to do is just listen and get through this in a civilized manner. Mr. Erskine-Smith, I'm not going to press it with you, but I will ask you to use parliamentary language and not curse in a committee setting. Mr. Perkins, you have the floor again, and please stay on topic.
I will stay on topic. Witness testimony, such as Annette Visharan, that said, which obviously MP Erskine-Smith hasn't read, said that she never applied, she said it 3 times, for a single job in her life, including this job. Yes, conveniently afterwards, she filled out the application after the minister called her twice to ask her to do the job. After Minister Baines refused to answer the question, even those phone calls or the content, perhaps MP Erskine-Smith could do some of that reading. Perhaps he could also do some reading about Andre Lise-Miteau, who former Liberal Minister Baines, overseeing the Green Slush Fund, appointed in 2016 to the board, whose companies got more than $100 million of Green Slush Fund money while she was on the board. Perhaps Mr. Erskine-Smith could read the testimony of previous witnesses, including the chair of the fund, who admitted that when Andre Lise-Miteau was moved by the Liberals to the Infrastructure Bank board for a new appointment, the first thing she did was approve $170 million for the slush fund chair's company, NR Store. But that would require a little bit of research. It would require research to find out that in 2023, the Natural Resources Department gave Ms. Visharan's company $50 million. That's after the staff were employed at SDTC to find her company more money, since her company was rejected finally for SDTC money by,
order, Mr.
because
Chair?
of conflicts. These are the testimonies that the
Mr.
minister
Perkins,
refused
Mr.
to
Perkins,
answer.
Mr. Perkins, I have a point of order for Mr. Durian.
So I just want you to be fair when you're applying the rules, Mr. Perkins, and I didn't raise a point of order on this, but he evaded on the motion on the floor, the current motion on the floor. You allowed him to speak, so I'm expecting that you will not interrupt me when I talk about the same issues as Mr. Perkins is talking about. I just want the chair to apply the same rules for everyone. I'm taking notice and I'm recording what we've got blues, because I'll repeat them. If I find that you're not being fair, I will raise a
That's fine, but again, I'll just relevance, which I urge Mr. Perkins to get back to. No repetition and no reading. Mr. Perkins, you have the floor.
Relevance, of course, is that these questions were asked of former Minister Baines, the architect of the Liberal Green Slush Fund, who refused to answer. He gave the same answer to every question. Every question, regardless what the question was, the answer was not relevant, and that's what prompts privilege. When we asked him about the issue of the appointment process of Ms. Visharan, all he could say is, I made appointments, I don't remember. These things are why we're here on talking about the privilege motion I moved, because while it's true, witnesses can give answers to questions that members may disagree with, but they have to actually be relevant to the question. And he didn't give one single answer to any opposition member relevant to the question. And Mr. Erskine-Smith knows that because he was here in the committee and he heard it. Now, maybe he had a challenge understanding that when a member says, did you talk to Annette Visharan in a phone call about the appointment, that he says it's a application process and a fair and open process. I guess he doesn't understand how to make the connection between yes or no, I spoke to her or I didn't, versus saying some automatron, hologram type answer where he was pre-programmed to say one line all the time. And I understand that the Liberals are upset that every time we have a meeting, and we, except for former Minister Baines, that they're upset that we uncover and reveal more Liberal corruption, and all other witnesses have been here answering the questions and revealing shocking revelations about these Liberal appointees that were appointed by the Prime Minister, handpicked by the Prime Minister, and put in by Navdeep Baines. Somebody told him to do it because it's very clear he didn't know what to do, so he was just told something, because all he does is seem to repeat things that other people tell him to say. And we're trying to get to the bottom of that, and it's incredible that the privilege breach that we saw yesterday with former architect of the Liberal Green Slush Fund, Navdeep Baines, is not seen by Liberal members, is something to be troubled about. They're not troubled by the theft of $400 million. They're not troubled by the fact that that only represents half of what the Auditor General had available to look at. The Liberal members, including MP Erskine Smith, have never even once acknowledged the fact that out of the $856 million in the audit period that the Auditor General looked at, that only half of the conflict of interest were revealed, because she only looked at half the transactions. And shockingly, 82% were there. And Mr. Erskine Smith would have us believe that an ADM sitting in every meeting never reported anything to Minister Baines. About 82% of the time, these Liberal appointees voting money for themselves. Never once a bureaucrat, a senior bureaucrat, would have never reported that up to Minister Baines or Minister Champagne, who was also silent for 40 months on this and never said anything till it was public. These are the issues of privilege that former Minister Baines breached, and that's why we're here, and that's why the motion's on the table. And I will leave it at that for now, Mr. Chair, just because I'm sure we'll have great insight from the Liberal members, and perhaps an explanation from Mr. Erskine Smith about his language.
Thank you very much. Next is Mr. Erskine Smith. You have